I'm going to take all these pieces off that I've already cut because I want to be able to fit the bits to the side. The skirting, it's not skirting, it's decking. I'm going to take off all of the decking that I've already cut because once it's removed, it'll be easier for me to attach the pieces of decking that I've cut down for the sides. I'm also going to add an extra layer of beams. This works well, but I kind of want to have an extra security layer. And since I popped into the shop just last week to pick up some extra materials, I added some of these to my car as well. So I'm going to add this, then I'm going to add the decking, and then I'm going to come back and add the entire deck on afterwards and screw it all down. I still have to do the top. Okay, let's get started. I'm taking off all of these pieces of wood. I'm not hiding them, I'm just taking them into my basement because that's where I have my miter saw. I'm going to cut these all at exactly the same time. I've measured this deck and I know that all of these pieces are absolutely fine to be the same size. I set all of this up and immediately knocked my camera over, which is just so typical. I started by shaving off the ends. I only took off about 0.4 centimeters, 0.5 centimeters, just to shave off the really ugly ends. I talked about this in my last video. Only after I'd shaved off the ends, I measured all of the pieces to the right size and cut them all at once. Had a bit of a fight with my hot tub. This room is really busy and I'm really fighting for space. This job is made so much easier by having a miter saw. This is one of the last tools that I've picked up, and I haven't got it till now because tools aren't inexpensive, and I didn't really need it. You know, I had a jigsaw, I had a circular saw, but I figured it was time, and it does make a huge difference. So I'm taking all of these bits off, and I put them on the side in the exact position that I had taken them off because I didn't want to get them mixed up. I did really struggle with this bit. It was stuck, and I didn't want to wedge it out too much because I thought the edges would snap, and by the edges I mean there's a very thin bit of wood that goes round the back of those posts, and if I try too hard to move it, it will end up chipping off the wood. So I just took a hammer and tried to knock out the screw that was in the wall. This screw was left over from the previous post that I had in this position. Once I'd managed to get that screw out of the way, I very carefully removed it. See, that's what I mean. Those edges are quite skinny. Didn't want to chop those off. To be able to install these second tier of beams, I had to clear out a little bit of space underneath here. Now, ideally I wouldn't have these beams resting on the ground, but this particular part of the ground was just really highly raised. There must have been just like a little mound of soil here before I actually put the grass seed down, so I just kind of scraped that away so that it would fit. I then persuaded it into place with my feet tools. It did need a fair bit of convincing. I decided to screw these in at the edges first because I could screw them directly into the posts before I joined these two pieces of wood together. Drilled some pilot holes through the top. Here I'm just adding some of the larger screws, putting them in situ, ready for me to screw them all in at once. Try and make easy work of this job. There it goes. This is one of the ways in which I'm going to try and increase the strength of the deck. You may have seen in a previous video that when I stood on this deck frame, it was quite wobbly, much more wobbly than I really wanted it to be. The other thing that I did was to install some breeze blocks underneath the main part of the frame, just to add that extra little bit of support. The only place where I won't be securing an extra one of these is round the back, where I've already secured this deck against the wall. This particular part I thought deserved a little close-up, so I came to grab you. When I installed this post with the postcrete, there was just a kind of residue of the material on the outside of the post, which isn't a huge deal because it's obviously hidden underneath the deck, but it became a problem because this is where the piece of wood needs to go. And when I tried to put it in situ, it was kind of pushing out. It was standing proud and it didn't fit properly. So I have to chip away all of this old material, doing this one-handed because I'm trying to hold the camera with the other. I do like to make things hard for myself. So this goes in between the post and the wall. This was quite fiddly with one hand, but you can just about see in the distance there where I managed to wedge it in. This is a really satisfying moment because you get to see it go in. There we go. Lying flat now. That's exactly what I wanted. Just like I did with the other pieces of wood, I'm going to screw this end into the post so that it's secure, and then I'm going to screw in those larger screws from above. I'm using my boot here as a kind of third pair of hands to keep it in roughly the right position whilst I screw in. I don't have a magnetised bit on this drill, which would make this a whole lot easier, and I do have one, I just don't know where it is. So instead, I'm kind of doing this awkward pushing it slightly into the wood so that it sticks, and then with one hand trying to catch it before it drops and screwing it into the wood. It does work, it's just a little bit fiddly, and the second that I find my magnetic bit I won't lose it again. After I'd cut this all and screwed it in, I realised I would have preferred to have done this part a little bit differently. Maybe have the bottom piece of wood a bit longer so the way they cross over each other is different, because I think that kind of makes it a little bit stronger. Anyway, again, using my boot as a third pair of hands before screwing this in. I changed out this drill bit so that it was the correct one for... Oh no, I didn't. Whoops. Oh, that's kind of funny. Okay, now here's the drill bit. This is the one that I needed. The decking screws have a slightly different head on the top. It makes them easier to drive into the wood, but it does mean that sometimes I forget to change them out. This is going to be the final screw that I do for this side, and after I have finished adding all of these extra pieces of wood, I'm going to add some decking onto the front of this. It will be decorative, it will stop people from being able to see these kind of messier pieces of wood behind, and I'm also going to turn them the other way around so that you can see the ridges. This was for no other reason than personal choice. I just thought it would look a little bit nicer. I'm going to use this piece of wood as a tool. I'm going to rest it on the top here, and then when I try to affix this piece of decking, it will show me if it's at the correct height or not. Sometimes it can be really hard to do these things by eye, so if I use this as a guide, I can push it up against where it's supposed to be. There it is, about there. And I'm going to use my clamps to put it into the correct position before I try and screw it together. Mainly because this is a job that is quite hard to do with just two hands. Imagine trying to hold this level whilst also screwing into it at the same time. That said, it's hard to even get it in place with two hands. Just trying to get these clamps on was a real pain. But I do eventually do it. A little bit later on, I haven't done this yet, but I'm going to add another decking board, a really skinny one, below where this one is now, so that it looks finished. I don't want to have that gap in between the decking and the floor. And it also will help to prevent animals from getting underneath there, in particular rats, because as we know from my previous videos, I had a little rat family living under here, and they're just going to have to find somewhere else, okay? It was almost in the right place, but I gave it a few tappy taps just to make sure that it was really level. Screwed it in at the fence posts. I screwed it in on the second line in every single time I screwed in some of these screws because I wanted it to look even. So if you just roughly put them in the same place, it makes it look so much tidier. I'm going to screw in 2 screws every single time there is a joist. Not only because it makes this super secure, but when I come to do the top, that's the way that I'll be securing them. I'll be securing them with 2 screws every single time there's a joist. And by doing this on the side as well, it kind of gives it a uniform look, because this is what you're also going to see on the top. After these 3 sides are added, I'll be ready to start putting decking on the top, which I think is the most interesting and the most satisfying part of this job. I can't wait to show it to you, but that is not a job for today. So as always, if you have enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe to this channel.